My name is Will LeBlanc, and what I'm doing these days is teaching Yin Yoga. I would say probably the primary reason is because I personally benefit and love it so much, and I get to actually experience people benefiting from doing it. I've seen amazing results with people. You know, I have been teaching Yin Yoga exclusively since about 2003. And have worked with people, you know, ages 10 to 12, 13, 14, and I have students in their 80s and a couple in their 90s. So it's a practice that is accessible to anyone, no yoga experience necessary, and gives people the opportunity to address, you know, the way that they're holding tension, like I said, whether it's primarily psychological or emotional, into the physical body. So it's the kind of practice where you can see benefits and results in people very, very quickly. Very often after just a couple of classes, people report, you know, I'm sleeping better, this thing in my hip is feeling better, I was more relaxed in many ways. So yes, the benefits are, you know, are just part of the thing that I really enjoy about it. The Yin practices are meant to relax the muscle and get into the fibers that are really keeping everything tight. So the relationship between muscle and fascia becomes the point where we make a distinction. So Yin is meant for us to then work into those fibers, to work into the connective tissue of the body, not to stretch muscle, not to work muscle. And it can be rather uncomfortable. So we use the bolsters and the props so we can personally control and modify the amount of discomfort into the body. We're actually using the bolsters and the yoga posture, the form, to actually create compressive force into these areas that are holding the tension. In Yin, the alignment is very individual. And the reason for that is because everyone's skeleton is different. All the skeletal variations, all of our various tolerances, and the amount of pain receptors that we have. So when we come into a Yin Yoga pose, we're just approaching the discomfort. And the stages are to approach the discomfort, kind of lean into it, then to take a few moments to assess whether it's appropriate for you, and you want to stay there, or to withdraw a bit and to back off a bit. So you're finding a very personal, intimate place in the pose where you're feeling something, could be uncomfortable, you're not so deep you're going to hurt yourself, and then you make the decision where you're going to hover. The benefit, you know, technically is what we call mechanical transduction, okay? So that's just a fancy way of saying we're using compressive force to press into areas of the body that are restricted. And when we're pressing into that, we're pressing into the actual fibers of the body that have become tightened and misaligned, like knots of the body. And the idea is that the pressure then starts to activate the cellular activity to start to open and release. It starts to hydrate them, it starts to loosen them. So very different than a muscular stretch where we're just trying to kind of elongate it. We're just trying to elongate it and then come back. Nothing wrong with that, but the fascial covering doesn't get affected because fascia responds to very, very long-held compressive force. So what we're really doing is we're pressing in, we're holding it, we're stressing into the body, and then right underneath the envelope of the skin, the tissues, the fibers, the cells are starting to respond. And then that's the system that starts to open. Then ultimately it gives the muscles more room to breathe and elongate. So that's really technically what we're doing. And then it affects range of motion, flow of qi, all sorts of things in the body. Basically, there's 3 reasons why we use props in Yin Yoga. Yeah. So the first reason is to be able to relax the bones and the muscle. So if we're not in the context of muscle, we don't want to stretch the muscle like we would in a yang practice. We want to relax the muscle. So bone, muscle, we use the props to relax the muscle relatively. So once the muscle starts to unengage, and then we bring the force of the yoga pose into it, we're going to target more of the fascia, more of the fibers of the connective system. So that's the first reason to use bolsters and props in yin: relax and support the muscles and the bones. The second reason is to allow you to personally control the amount of body weight that you put in. So if we're coming forward and I have a significant amount of torso weight and I'm feeling it in my hamstring, maybe I don't want all of this torso weight creating this pressure in my hamstring. So what I do then is I skillfully use the bolster to modify how much intensity I apply. And then we either hover there, or we back off and put another bolster if we need to back off, or we remove the bolster if the body invites us to go deeper and we can tolerate that intensity. So the bolsters are like a way to modify and moderate the amount of intensity we put in to the body. And then the third reason we use bolsters in yin is to actually create the compression. So some of what I'll be showing you is we're actually using the bolster to apply compressive force to the body. So the yoga pose, yes, but then the addition of the yoga bolster allows us to go into places we wouldn't normally be able to go. Well, you know, I could just go on all day about the salamander because it's so versatile. One of the things I like about it is the size. So the size is very compatible with the lumbar curve, yeah? So I like that about it. I like that the amount of filling can be shifted. So I can do things with poses where I can move the filling in and go a little bit deeper, or somebody is having a challenge with intensity and we can move some of the filling out and lessen it. So it's very versatile in that way, and it works very well with the larger bolster. So the two are just super, super compatible. So we can use the versatility of the salamander in, I'm going to show you maybe a dozen ways to use it today, but the applications go far beyond that. One of the most important things when you're beginning to work with the bolsters and yin is to understand what it means to be intuitive with the body. Yeah? So when people first come into a yin practice, there's often a hesitation in, well, what am I supposed to do? What is this pose supposed to look like? What should I be feeling? All this list of shoulds. And so by using the bolsters properly, it gives you an opportunity to kind of move a little bit and adjust and really listen to your own body. In yin, we're really opening up to the quality of being receptive and being open, but being open to one's own individual, unique intuition. So that's very, very important, and the bolsters allow us to do that because I can have a class of 25 people at all different ranges of expertise or comfort in their body. So I can have someone that's 80 years old and stiff and brittle, and someone that's 20 years old and has been doing yoga for 5 years, and we can use the bolsters to bring them both to a place of equilibrium, and they can both listen to their body in a very intuitive way. So that's what we want to really appreciate the use of the bolsters, is that it allows us to enter into more of an intuitive space with our body. So let's begin the demonstration of the use of this large cotton-filled bolster and the small salamander bolster to support your yin yoga practice. We're using these bolsters not as a definitive universal alignment, but really to support the intuitive awareness of your body, to help you ease into the weight, support the weight. So really my encouragement is to be creative with them and be intuitive with them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some real foundational uses of these bolsters that you can incorporate into your own practice, into your teaching. The applications are really infinite with these bolsters. So the first thing we're going to do is work into the ankles. So we're going to take the big bolster and come forward and just relax the knees on the bolster like this. So we're not curling the toes under. My toes are nice and straight, and right now I'm easing into the arch. So what I like about the height of this bolster is that we're able to then modify the amount of pressure that we're putting not only into the knees, but also into the ankles. So if you're feeling like this is not accessible to you, then the beauty of this is you can always come forward. And you can just keep coming forward until the pressure feels like you can tolerate it. Right here, or right here, or right here. You really want to kind of play the edge with that. If you're able to bring the torso over the hips and the hips over the heel, right now you're getting a very solid pressure into the ankles. And then over time, if your body invites you to come away from the support, you can start to bring the knees up. So the baseline of this pose with the bolster is right here. And then you come forward to release or go back to deepen. Let's talk about a forward bend next. So our very basic butterfly pose in Yin is a lovely soft forward bend, but oftentimes the knees and the hips will inhibit softening into the lumbar spine. So the way that we use the bolster here is to just very simply bring it under the knees. This is especially lovely after a long held backward bend when we just want to isolate the target area to the lumbar spine. So you just bring the big bolster under the knees, relax the hips, feet can be close together or you can open them a bit. And then for the Yin forward bend, we want to make sure that we are really relaxing the lower back. We're not attempting to lengthen or stretch. And then the bolster takes a lot of the intensity out of the hips and out of the knees and allows us to have a very soft, almost luxurious experience into the lumbar spine. You want to allow the weight of the head to enter into the upper spine and then just relax into it for whatever time you're holding. Very gently start to roll up through the spine. And just remove the bolster, straighten out the legs, let the knees breathe, and just take a rest before we move on. The next thing I would like to share with you is again with the large cotton-filled bolster, and this is what we call the supported square. So when we have a square pose, we have a lot of options to place the foot on the calf, oftentimes tight on the knee, come into the hip. But to support the square, we take the large bolster and put it in front of the bent leg and take the top leg and put it onto the bolster. So there's a couple of advantages to doing this. One is by elevating the femur out of the hip, we're going to target the IT band. So the large band of fascia coming out of the glutes up into the knee, we're also going to stretch and open into the piriformis. So very, very therapeutic to do to keep us away from sciatica. So again, this is not a universal alignment. You have a lot of options here. One of the things I like about using the bolster is that we can angle the leg open a bit. So if the knee feels a little tight or the hip feels a little tight, feel free to angle this. So open it a bit if you need to open it, close it a bit if you need to close it. This supported square, it may feel a little unfamiliar at first, but that's really part of what we're exploring in Yin, is unfamiliar parts of the body. So set the leg on top of the bolster, make any adjustments that feel appropriate to your body, and then again, we want to relax the shoulders, relax the weight of the head, soften and round the lower back, and just very gently and very intuitively approach where you're feeling discomfort. Like I said, this may be unfamiliar down the right side of the elevated leg, so be mindful of that. Once you find a depth that feels appropriate for you, then find a comfortable place for the hands, wherever they feel most supportive, and allow yourself to
gently relax into the pose. Always allow yourself to release slowly. So we're interested in the relationship between muscular tension and fascial restriction. Once you're up, you can relax and take a breath. You can remove your bolstering. Always nice after bent knees to straighten them out, let them relax and breathe, maybe wiggle a bit, and then we would lie down. Let's approach the half butterfly pose now. So our traditional half butterfly pose with one leg extended and one leg in, it's a very effective pose for targeting the lower lumbar. Oftentimes what restricts going deeper into the lumbar is the tightness of the hamstring. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the salamander and we're going to put the extended leg under the knee, and we're going to bring the bent leg up onto it. So this is two things it's going to do. It's going to release some of the tension in the hamstring to allow you to go deeper into the lumbar, and it's also going to allow you to explore the connection of the IT band and once again the piriformis. The thing to remember with this pose is we do not need to bring the forehead directly forward, hips and shoulders. Intuitively let the weight of the upper body come forward. Yeah. So if you're able to allow yourself to come down to rest on the arms and hands, this is a good place. If you're feeling like there's some tentativeness or some discomfort that you do not want to go past, then you also take the big bolster. So the big bolster is always beneficial to let this torso weight rest. So we use the big bolster to feel supportive and safe on whatever level we're coming to. And then if at some point you're in the pose and your body's inviting you to go deeper, then you just remove the larger bolster and sink into whatever depth you're invited to be. Coming up slowly and mindfully, taking a nice inhale breath. You can remove the bolster, straighten out that bent knee, and take a well-deserved rest. Coming now into a straddle forward bend, very often when we open the legs to whatever our range of motion allows and come forward, the weight of the upper body pulls into the adductors, into the groin. And how to modify that weight is often challenging if we're not having the range of motion to come more forward. So using the round bolster is very, very effective here. And there's a couple of ways that you can use it. You can either tuck it in and bring it into your belly and relax your arms on it this way. So this is more stationary and supportive. And also, you could bring the salamander into this as well to bring the height up a little bit more. And that's really the use of the bolsters, is to really modify height and body weight to fit your body as much as possible. So this is one option, and then you can relax the head down. It's very supportive. Or if you have an idea that your body is going to eventually go a little bit deeper into the pose, you turn the round bolster this way and come and relax the arms this way. Relax the head down. And then if you're feeling a bit of a release or an invitation to go deeper, then you simply, at some point, release the bolster and then come into your full pose. If at some point you feel like you're in too deep, and this goes for any of our positions, the bolster is always available. You just pull it back and support yourself, make a valid adjustment, and then go back into your pose. Come out with great care.
Always have the option when you rest to put the bolster under the knees, and this can be so supportive for the hips, and take your rest with the femurs elevated. Let's move into some backward bends, and the most important thing with a backward bend is really making sure that the initial intensity is not such that you're going to either injure yourself or be distracted by the discomfort. So using the bolsters is very important to get a depth that is appropriate for you. So something relatively simple and on the mild end of things is to straighten out the legs, take the round bolster, and we're going to put it long ways into the lower back. So the tendency when we come back is for the bolster to slide a bit, and then there's a gap between lower back and bolster, and we don't want that gap. So the best thing to do is to hold the bolster in and kind of tuck it into the lower back. Whenever we do a backward bend, we want to put the feet on the floor so we can stabilize and support the spine. And then just very gently start to ease onto it to make sure this is appropriate for you. So once you feel the compressive force into the lumbar spine, you can let the rest of the upper body relax down, relax the arms, and then the last thing to relax out are the legs. This is a backward bend that you could stay for a very long time and really absorb the compression and the stress into the lumbar spine. Good. And then to go a little bit deeper, if we wanted to then transform this simpler backward bend into the full saddle, which will accentuate the lumbar in a much deeper way, what we would then do is we would bend both of the knees back. So here's another intuitive use of the bolstering. If your knees and your quadriceps are very tight and you're uncertain whether you can go into the full saddle in a backward bend, then what you simply do is you simply bring the bolster underneath the hips. So this will give you some time to let the knees and the quadriceps acclimate to going back. So spend as much time as you need here. Make sure you feel safe in the knees and the quads and the hips. And if and when you do, then you release the bolster out. See how this feels now once you've given yourself some time and some gentleness here. And then the same thing. Keep the bolster tucked in, kind of snuggle onto it so it doesn't slide, and see if you can relax your body completely over. Go into the full saddle in a backward bend, ultimately leading to do it without the bolster, but the bolster makes it safe and much more accessible than it otherwise would be. Good. And then we have a third option. So what we've done is we've now done a relatively mild depth, and we've done a relatively intense depth with the knees bent back in the full saddle. So now we're going to combine these two bolsters, and they combine very, very well. One of the things we want to know about this bolster is that the filling is very malleable. So we could bring the filling in. I could bring the filling in so I'm going to get more pressure in my lumbar, or I can work the filling out to make a little hollow here and it's a little less pressure. So it's almost like you can custom design this for your lumbar spine. It's just a lovely, effective tool to have especially for Yin Yoga. So what we're going to do with this is probably one of my favorite backward bends, is we're going to bring the large bolster in, we have it long ways, and we're going to place this bolster right over the end of it. So it's right on the end. And then we're going to come back and, again, snuggle the lumbar spine in. Always want to hold it in so it doesn't slide. Once again, the reminder, whenever we're coming back, we want the feet on the floor to make sure the lower back is safe. And then just relax over it. Sometimes I'll stop halfway just to let my body know that I'm being mindful and respectful. Once you have the upper body over it, only then we'll let the legs release out.
and just relax. Make sure the hips, the buttocks, or sit bones are on the floor. Make sure the neck feels safe, and then stay here for whatever time is appropriate for you. And then depending on the intensity of the backward bend, always a very intelligent thing to just roll off. And especially if you're holding this for a long period of time, we want to roll off and maybe come into fetal pose and just take the time here to let the lower back release and soften so we don't run into anything unsafe. The next variation I'd like to show you is a combination of a supported fish pose, and we're going to apply lumbar traction. So typically in our backward bends, we're just using straightforward compression. This is quite a unique backward bend because we're going to be supplying that compression, but it's also going to have a tractioning effect on the spine. So what we're going to do is we're going to once again use both bolsters, the round one, and then we're going to take the smaller one and put it over the rounder one. Elevate your hips, sit up on the bolster, and then depending on the length of the torso, you need to fit this to your own body. So the smaller bolster is going to stay pretty much in the lumbar spine, and then the end of the round bolster will catch us in the mid-spine. You want to hold on to it, keeping the feet on the floor to support the backward bend, and then coming to the forearms or the hands and letting the back of the head come on the floor. So right now I'm checking in to make sure the end of the round bolster is in my thoracic spine, the small bolster is snug into my lumbar spine, and then when I feel safe and ready, I just let the legs come out. And so again, this is providing a compressive force in my thoracic spine and a pulling on my lumbar spine, and it's quite lovely. You can stay here for as long as you would like. To release, we want to put the feet on the floor, and when we're lying back, the recommendation always is to roll to the side, bring the knees up. Take some moments to let yourself stabilize and relax, soften into the lower spine. Moving into more backward bends now, specifically into the lumbar spine, we're going to use the salamander. Once again, we can bring the filling in to kind of isolate and concentrate into the lower back, or we can make this lovely hollow space. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this in the lumbar spine, and again, bringing it in so it doesn't slide, keeping the feet securely on the floor, holding it in place, coming to each elbow, and then typically what happens when we come back like this is the pelvis will tilt back, the buttocks will come off the floor. So we want to make sure we're having the hips on the floor for support. Once the upper body is secure, then we let the lower legs open. So this is a relative amount of pressure into the lumbar spine, and this is a good thing to feel, and we can stay here for an extended period of time. If you would like to go a little bit deeper, then what we would do is we would keep one leg extended and bring the other leg up into a half butterfly position. So what this is going to do is the weight of this leg is now going to pull you in into the right part of the lumbar. Left part is released a little bit, and this is allowing us to concentrate. And we can stay here for however long you need to. If this gets a little bit too intense, to release it, you can not only open this leg, which releases it, but if you bring the opposite leg up, this then releases this side here. So you have a great many options in how you configure the basic pressure with just both legs out. And to come out, always feet on the floor, and then move into a safe place, and then work yourself up. We're going to take this same bolster and we're going to move it into the mid-back. But what we're going to do, we're going to enhance it a little bit with the use of the blanket. So taking this blanket and folding it into thirds, it seems to work best, just so I have a nice supported pad here. And then I'm going to take the salamander and put it on the pad like this. Take this and put it in back. And then this again is intuitive because of the softness of the salamander, which is a big advantage working into the thoracic spine. You could come right onto the shoulder blades, onto the scapula. That's an option because they need to receive this force just like every other area of the body. Or you could work yourself more into the true center of the thoracic spine. Lovely for the respiratory diaphragm and the opening of the rib cage. Keeping the feet on the floor, letting the upper body release back, and then opening the legs. So one of the things that I recommend with this specific posture is to explore how long you stay here. This can last for 10, 12, 15, even 20 minutes. It's a very challenging area of the body to really access. So the longer you stay here, the more it will certainly benefit and start to open up not only the tightening of the mid-back, but also the breathing apparatus as well. And then to release, feet flat on the floor, rolling to the side, coming into a safe supported position. And then coming up when you're ready. So let's go back into the lumbar spine. We're going to use the salamander and we're also going to use the blanket again. This time we're going to take the blanket, and usually starting from this size of a rectangle is good. And so when I'm rolling it, obviously I have the option to roll it all the way up, and this will create a certain level of intensity. Or I could even just go halfway, or I could go part way. So again, this is the beauty of working with these bolsters, is that the way you use them is only really limited to your imagination and creativity. So I'll go about halfway. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my roll, and then I'm going to take the salamander and I'm going to put it over the roll like this. So don't make the mistake of just putting it over the bolster in any way. We want to have one end of the bolster really, in a way, touching the floor. So we have this nice curve here, and this is going to really support the hollow of the lumbar spine. Yep. So once you have this, then you can get in front of it. Again, sit on the floor, hold everything in place, and then slowly work yourself over this. So this, you'll feel this the shape of the lumbar following the shape of the salamander, and then bring the upper body down. Let the upper body relax. Check in how you're feeling. Make sure this is accessible, and then we open the legs out. Feet come back to the floor, and then just safely roll over to your side, curl up in a little ball, and then you have the option always to either to stay rolled up. This is a nice counter to the backward bend that you did, or certainly remove the bolstering and take your little mini Shavasana this way and relax. Or sometimes it's also intuitive, and after a yin pose you may feel just simply like taking child's pose. So again, this is to take a nice mild forward bend after all the backward bending.
Working now into the pelvis and the psoas. So two areas of the body that pretty much everyone has tension with. And this is a very unique use of this little salamander, but very, very effective to really use the quality of yin to work into the body in a very slow and consistent way. So very simple to do. You simply place the salamander crossways and then bring the back of the pelvis up onto it. So the only thing to be mindful of here is that most people will let this slip into the lumbar spine. This is not what we want. We want the flat of the pelvis here. So if you actually went to your hip bones and went down, there would the bolster would be. So really very supportive here, and then you can allow the legs to come out. So just this is nice because this allows the pelvis to separate a bit, to open. It gets into the sacrum. So you could spend a significant amount of time here. Then, if and when you're ready, to keep the upper body grounded right where it is and to walk the heels over to the right side of the room. Is just as far as your range of motion will allow. And this now will start to pull on the psoas, on the left side of the body. And then to take this even a little bit deeper, you simply take the left ankle and cross it over to the right, and then just relax. And then once you think you're as relaxed as you can possibly be, then relax a little more. You can uncross the ankles when you've reached your time. Make sure you walk the heels back to center, a nice stable spine, and then do the other side. A nice way to come out of this, instead of rolling off, is to bring the knees up, pull them in a bit, and have a little bit of sway. So this is just very, very therapeutic into the torquing, the tightening, the discomfort that most of us have in the pelvis. And then you can just release the bolster out from under and take your rest. So to come full circle, we began the demonstration of the use of the bolsters for Yin Yoga working into the ankles. And so now what we've done is we've spiraled up the body and we're going to work into the cervical spine. We're going to use the big round bolster and just spend some time there. So the whole theory and foundation of Yin Yoga is that the entire body is connected. There's no part of your body that is not connected to every other part. So working in the ankles and working up through the body, it really has a sense, especially for the physical body itself, to spend some time up into the cervical spine in a very yin, slow, conscious way. And this is how we practice yin, by slowing down and spending time and really listening to the rhythms and the intelligence of your body. We're going to work into the upper cervical spine using the round bolster. Very simple. You may want to have the small bolster nearby. So I'm going to show you some variations. This will be the mid one. So very simple to do. What we want to do is lie down on your belly. And we're going to place the
right ear on the bolster. The important thing about this is not to put the shoulder on the bolster, but to let the right arm relax down. So there's no shoulder on the bolster, and then the weight of the shoulder will pull you into the neck. Let the lower body relax and just sit here for as long as you want. So if you want it to come deeper, this is where we use the combination of the bolsters. You can use the salamander on top of the round one and do the same thing. Again, the weight of the shoulder pulling you into the neck twist. If you wanted to go a little more shallow, you could do the same thing with just the salamander. It just depends on the sensitivity of your neck. Letting the shoulder relax and finding the right depth and intensity for your neck. And then always the key in any of these yin poses is to relax. But when you've held for time, you can remove the bolster and either allow yourself to relax on your belly, or you can turn over and relax on your back.